Like 2010 Edison format in terms of gameplay wise is the best era of Yu-Gi-Oh, arguably. But it's also the format that completely pushed away people, and it completely halted the progression of Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's how Pokemon surpassed them. Old Yu-Gi-Oh was awful, and I kind of want to know why that is. I want to know, like, what part of old Yu-Gi-Oh did he not like? When you say old Yu-Gi-Oh, what era? Because apparently Dragon Ruler is considered an old era of Yu-Gi-Oh. So the video here is made by Overcast Yugioh here. I'll be reacting to your video here because I am interested to see in what way was old Yu-Gi-Oh awful. I understand like Catapult Turtle FTK and Choose of Spirit were terrible. We can all admit that, right? Like Frog FTK was stupid. But also I want to know what other aspects of that gameplay style did you not like? DM to GX era is considered old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Bro, dude, according to Farfa's video, where a lot of commentators, man, anything past 2019 and 17 is considered old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay? Say that Adamantipator's and Tri-Brigade are old school decks, okay? So I don't know.
I always hear people say that they prefer old Yu-Gi-Oh!, often calling themselves old school. Although I played the game as early as 2005, I didn't play in any kind of competitive environment.
And that is brutally honest here. That is an honest, true, gosh darn take also. Alright? Most people who say that they're old school Yu-Gi-Oh players did not play old school Yu-Gi-Oh! You played Playground Yu-Gi-Oh!
So recently, I've been doing some research into old Yu-Gi-Oh! And while there are some formats I'd definitely prefer to play over modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, I've also seen that it certainly wasn't this perfect card game that people make it out to be. There were several formats with extremely unbalanced cards, terrible game mechanics, and poorly handled interactions.
Yeah?
In this video, I will cover a list of factors that contributed to some of these terrible formats in traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! But before we get into it, please like, comment, and subscribe as it helps grow the channel.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe for Overcast Yugioh right over there, actually. Yeah. But here's the thing. People did not play real old school Yu-Gi-Oh! They didn't.
In March 2002,
you played simulators and you played jank anime.
There was no ban list and no limited list. This meant that every card available in the game could legally be run at 3 copies per deck. There were many cards available in the first few sets that were significantly more powerful than the rest, and so powerful that they either still see play today or have been banned for most of the game's history.
Yeah, you are right, that is elitist.
This meant that there was very little diversity in the game. Strategies simply revolved around...
This is my deck here. This is pretty much my deck. Except I have like 5 copies of Dark Hole. Dude, okay, so I did 6 Trap Holes, 5 copies of Dark Hole, and then just like multiple copies of this. Me and my cousins would have just 3 copies of Change of Heart. Think about it now, dude. This was not fun at all. Oh my goodness. Woo. Okay. Wow. Wow. Okay.
Stuffing as many copies of the best.
There's like a clear lack of skill
in with every competitive deck running almost all of the same 3-ofs. If you weren't running 3 Regekis, 3 Pots of Greeds, and 3 Monster Reborns, then you were statistically at a huge disadvantage over someone who was.
Yeah.
A limited list did come into play a few months later. However, this still left every deck requiring the same series of 1-ofs. These 1-ofs were even more mandatory than Max C is in Master Duel today, and many more staple 1-ofs came into the game over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'll say this right now. Okay, I'm going back to this list over here. Wait. Okay, so going back to this, even in like Gold format, even it's like people right now currently complain that a lot of the decks are too similar, but generic support happening here. This is generic support right over here. Look at this. This is not an archetype here. This is not an archetype. Like, what's the theme of this deck? There is no theme. So it is complete logical fallacy for anybody to be like, I like old school Yu-Gi-Oh because the deck had a theme to it. It's like, but this is not a theme. Like, nobody even in the anime had an actual theme for their deck. They don't. It's crazy. Yeah, but no. See, archetypes weren't a thing back then. They weren't. It's like the Mandela effect here. They weren't really a thing. But for some reason, there are people who believe that archetypes were a thing when they grew up playing old school Yu-Gi-Oh, but it wasn't. You had a bunch of multiple copies of spell and trap cards, that did stuff outside of
An
your own
actual
archetype.
ban list was finally introduced in October 2004, which took most of these overpowered cards out of the game. Many of the cards that were banned around
tunes are an
2004
archetype, yeah,
and 2005
but you're just going for beaters.
stayed on the ban list for many years.
Like, instead of 3
with some
Ash
of them
Blossoms,
still
you're going
being
for, like,
banned to
3
this
Pot of
day,
Greeds,
20
right?
years later.
Instead of 3 Pot of
On the 1st of
Prosperities,
September
you're going for, like,
2002,
Graceful Charities.
the first tournament pack was released. Tournament packs were, as the name suggests, packs only given out at official licensed tournaments. Most of the cards in Tournament Pack 1 were irrelevant, however there was an ultra rare card exclusive to this pack called Mechanical Chaser.
Oh man, dude.
Just looking at
I've
this
beaten
card,
so many
you may
nerds
be
with this card
wondering why
alone,
this card
actually,
was
if you
such
play
a
old school
problem.
format decks.
Well, let me explain.
It's
Mechanical
unfairly good.
Chaser is a level 4 normal monster with 1850 attack points. That attack stat is really important at this stage in the game's history. Before Tournament Pack 1 was released, the vanilla level 4 monsters with the highest attack points in the game were Large Inn and 7 Coloured Fish, with 1800 attack points each. There were some level 4 monsters in the game with higher attack points, Dark Elf and Jiraigumo, but they came with high life point costs.
If you had a monster with 2000 defense man, you were just pretty much done.
This
you were
meant
just
that Mechanical Chaser could effectively attack over any non-tributed
and then you set a monster face down with 2000
advantage to players who were able
like
to
Aquamador,
obtain
and then you
copies
stage
of
for the
this
whole
card.
day.
Tournament packs only contained 3 cards per pack, and the odds of pulling the ultra rare cards were very low, so this card was extremely difficult to get a hold of at the time, having a price tag of over $200 per copy.
Oh man, I hate modern current day Yu-Gi-Oh, man. Current modern day Yu-Gi-Oh is crazy. The card prices are insane. Back then you can get whatever card you want and it would be so much cheaper. And then Mechanical Chaser, which you want 3 copies of, is $200. What the heck? Alright.
Turning up to local tournaments as a budget player was extremely frustrating for many who would find themselves running into players fortunate enough to pull this card from a pack, or have several $100s available to splash out on buying this card from another player.
Man, dude.
This shows that even in this very early stage of the game's lifespan, players would find themselves being
people who
priced
play this
out
game were
of
kids
top
for the
finishes
most
at
part.
tournaments. A couple of weeks after the release of the first tournament pack, a booster set called Magic Ruler was released, which was later renamed to Spell Ruler. Before the release of this pack, there were already a handful of powerful spell cards in the game which I touched upon earlier, so these new spell cards had to be strong if they wanted to compete with the ones released previously, and they certainly were just that. 3 of the spell cards in this set, Delinquent Duo, Confiscation and the Forceful Sentry, all came with effects that allowed the player to rip cards out of their opponent's hand.
You feel so gypped
got a chance to play them.
if these cards were ever activated on you.
I personally have never liked the hand destruction mechanic, where you get to rob your opponent of their resources before they could use them. I mean, yeah, I know I play Triple Tactics Talent on Master Duel, but that's because you kind of have to in the current format. But anyway, keeping it on the subject, let's start with Delinquent Duo. This spell card was activated by paying 1,000 life points.
Not gonna lie, dude, a part of me wants Delinquent Duo to come back.
The opponent discards 1 card from their hand.
I think the current game would be a lot more fun if you made it more chaotic
they discard
and
an additional card of their choosing. I honestly think that every single person involved with the development and testing of this card was drunk or something. I don't know how they decided that adding a spell card to the game,
it's a terrible, unfair card. There's no way you cannot play this and not feel like you're jipping someone out.
Was ever a good idea.
But the stupidity behind it, though, is why you want this, why it makes it fun.
Immediately on release, and found itself being one of the first cards in the TCG to be banned when the first ban list went up in 2004. And as of May 2024, it's still banned and will probably never be unbanned.
Okay, honest take here. If Delinquent Duo was at 3 and no one play it, that is an honest take there. If Delinquent Duo was around, I don't think anyone's gonna play Delinquent Duo. If they errata it where it's a hard once per turn. Over or under that, do you guys think if Delinquent Duo came out with the balance, people would play this in the current format? I don't think so at all, in my opinion here.
The second card, Confiscation, was also activated by paying 1,000 life points. This card allowed the player to look at their opponent's hand and pick one of them to be discarded. Although this card only ripped 1 card as opposed to Delinquent Duo's 2 cards, Confiscation allowed you to choose the card that was to be discarded. And as an added bonus, seeing your opponent's hand also provides information which gives you a strong advantage. Confiscation was also limited on release, and it was then banned in April 2005.
Confiscation is a lot more better than
It was unbanned later that year, but was banned again in September 2007, this time for
I think
good.
confiscation should not be it,
It's still banned in
but
the TCG as of May 2024.
Should definitely be allowed.
The third card is the Forceful Sentry. This card is very similar to Confiscation.
So this card should not come back at all. This right
and
here
instead of discarding
is way
a card
too
from
unfair
your
of a card.
opponent's hand, you shuffle it
At least
back
for the
into
other cards you
deck
can discard
instead.
it, but for this here you're shuffling back
Like
the
with
deck.
the two cards mentioned above,
Because a lot of cards nowadays can
also
float,
limited
right? But
immediately
that
on
one was floating.
release, and it joins Confiscation on the ban list in April 2005, and is still banned in the TCG to this day.
If Pot of Greed were to come back and it was a once per duel thing, people would still not play it. I do genuinely believe that if Pot of Greed were to come back in the game, it would not be played. Wait, no. Would it be played though? Oh, okay. No, it's better than Pot of Extrav. Yeah, it would be played. It would be played, but it wouldn't be a game. It wouldn't decide the game for people. That's my take on that. If Pot of Greed came back, it wouldn't change the outcomes of the game.
Having a very short amount of time in the game before being effectively permabanned. I don't remember any of the kids on my middle school playground owning these cards, but I'm glad I never played at a level where I'd be running into them often. Next up, we have an old game mechanic, Ignition Effect Priority on
Ignition
summon.
effects were dumb, and
So
you all
what is
know
an
it.
Ignition effect?
The only reason y'all like
Ignition
ignition effect
is
is because you had
that is
priority.
activated manually. So let's consider the following monster, Chaos Sorcerer. Chaos Sorcerer has an ignition effect that the player can activate to target one face-up monster on the field and banish it. Under the old ruling, Chaos Sorcerer's effect could be activated in the summon response window after summoning itself. Therefore, it could be played before the opponent gets a chance to respond with a card like Bottomless Trap Hole.
Which is ridiculous.
Bottomless Trap Hole would still destroy and banish Chaos Sorcerer, but Sorcerer's effect would still resolve, and the face-up monster would still be banished.
Oh man,
This
for
mechanic allowed
cards like
decks
Dark
like
Iron Dragon,
Chaos
man,
to
it's
thrive,
ridiculously
as
stupid.
their effects were difficult to prevent. This broken game mechanic that allowed the ignition effects of monsters to be played during the summoning window was eventually removed from the OCG
If you guys know
in 2011
Bryonic Dragon
and the TCG
Dad,
in 2012.
yeah, those two cards specifically
So
are
looking
really
at some
hard to
specific
take advantage
decks
of
now, we have the
with ignition
Yata-Lock,
stuff.
one
Thank God
of,
it's
if
gone.
not the most toxic strategy in traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! This deck was built around a card from the Legacy of Darkness set that was released in 2003, and that card is a monster card called Yata-Garasu. So let's
pronounce Yata-Garasu, guys, aren't? Okay, I like Yata-Garasu now.
Like much.
Yata-Garasu's plate
A level
is
2 monster
available
with
now, no one
200
plays it.
attack points and 100 defense points.
It's such a hard
But
setup.
let's read its card
Yes,
text.
Yata is
This
unbanned.
card cannot be special summoned, and being a spirit monster,
No, Yata's
this card
unbanned. Y'all
returns
can
to
play
the
Yata
owner's
right now
hand during the
in
end
the real life
phase of
duels,
the turn it was
but
normal
nobody wants to
summoned
play it.
or flipped face up. And now here's the scary part. When this card inflicts battle damage to the opponent, skip the draw phase of their next turn.
Yeah, you can play Yata-Garasu,
effect
just no one wants to
was
play
insane.
Yata-Garasu because it's
If
just,
your
it's just not a
opponent
good
didn't
card.
have
It
any way
requires
to
so
stop
much
this
setup
card from getting its
for
effect
the
off,
meme to
then they were
work.
unable to draw any more cards. Therefore, there was nothing they could do other than to sit there until their life points were whittled down to nothing. Many powerful removal effects and hand rip effects were still present in the game at this time, so it was very easy to clear the field or rob your opponent of any possible counterplays they may have, allowing yourself to easily get that direct attack in. And even if your opponent did have a normal summon or removal spell in their hand, Yata-Garasu returns to the hand at the end of the turn, so your opponent would never have a chance to attack
And you can't
or
bottomless
remove
it also.
This strategy
Like,
was the first Tier 0 deck in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yata-Garasu?
And was arguably the reason why Konami started banning cards, with Yata-Garasu being banned during the TCG.
Yeah,
in
most
the
of
first ban
the
list
power
at the end
cards
of
back then have been
2004,
power crept.
spending
But
almost
let's not
18 years
pretend
on
here
the
that
ban
like
list before
the
being
cards during this time
unbanned
period
in May
were
2022.
incredibly unfair.
Moving from one toxic deck to another.
There it is,
Scientist
Scientist FTK
FTK
here, which is supremely easy to
section
do.
you probably saw coming if you recognise the guy
It's
on the
more you
thumbnail
can
of
do this
video.
more so than the
Magical
Yata-Garasu thing.
Scientist is a monster from the Magician's Force pack, released near the end of 2003. A card that the designers clearly got completely wrong, as it enabled Yu-Gi-Oh's first ever competitive FTK strategy, an acronym that stands for First Turn Kill. Let's have a quick look at what Magical Scientist does. At the cost of 1000 life points, the effect allowed the player to special summon a level 6 or lower fusion monster from the
you can
extra
spam
deck,
at monsters and then you go
known
to
as the fusion
Catapult
deck at the
Turtle
time.
and then you just like tribute
The
them
special
all over
summon
again.
monster could not attack directly, and was returned to the extra deck at the end of the turn. The FTK was achieved by combining this effect with a level 5 monster released in 2002, Catapult Turtle. This card allows the player to tribute one monster and inflict damage to the opponent equal to half of the tributed monster's attack points. This card has since been erratted to give it a soft once per turn restriction, but originally this card had no restriction on how many times it could use its effect.
The thing is though, mana system just wouldn't work in the current day Yu-Gi-Oh!
At this point in the game, there were multiple level 6 or lower fusion monsters with 2,100 attack points.
To get to that point.
So by using Magical Scientist effect, the player could special summon them at the cost of 1,000 life points each, and use Catapult Turtle's effect to deal 1,050 points of effect damage.
Didn't they make another character, a card like this, like Dark
more
Striker?
Times, dealt a
Like the
total
Synchro
of
monster?
7,350 points of damage. Then Catapult Turtle used its effect, targeting Magical Scientist to do 150 more points of damage, bringing the total up to 7,500. And then finally, Catapult Turtle used itself as a target to deal the final 500 points of damage to the opponent, bringing the total amount of damage to 8,000 points, enabling the turn 1 kill.
Yeah, sounds like a skill issue. Your opponent didn't play on your FTK because they had nothing on you.
Which wasn't too difficult to do.
This is what I'm talking about old school Yu-Gi-Oh! You feel like you're getting gypped all the time.
Summon itself from the hand, giving tribute fodder for Catapult Turtle, and spell cards including Reasoning, Monster Gates, and Last Will to special summon monsters from the deck. And you also had Monster Reborn and Premature Burial to special summon from the graveyard if you sent Catapult Turtle or Magical Scientist.
Yeah, you were so hard carried by spell cards.
Graceful Charity.
Like, other than Mechanical Chaser, like, for the most part, your spell cards pretty much, like, hard carried
There was nothing
duels.
you could do about it. We didn't have hand traps at this time. No Veiler, no Imperm, no Ash Blossom, no Ghost Ogre, no Hanawata, no Nibiru. You were just dead before you even got a chance to play a single card. When I look back and see strategies like this, it honestly baffles me how the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game survived beyond its first few years.
Okay, he's probably gonna go over it actually here at this point here, but I don't want to say this. So here's the thing. 90% of people did not experience this. Alright? I'm pretty gosh darn certain that the large majority of people out there who played Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid did not experience any of this stuff here. I experienced some of this stuff, but I didn't experience all of it. Like, I didn't know about Magical Scientist FTK till much more later down the line, because I never played with kids who did use Magical Science FTK. Like, I did not use, like, Reasoning, or, I didn't use Reasoning or Summoning Gates to, like, spam at a monster here. You've experienced it as a kid? Because when I grew up, though, I did not experience this at all as a kid, or for the most part, though. Because it was like, it's you, your friends, and your family members, and then your parents bought you Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, or a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck from Walmart, or Target, or whatever. Or a swap meet, who knows. They buy you cards, and you play it amongst yourselves. Because even back then, even if Pokemon is well, like, accepted now as, like, a thing that just generally everyone likes nowadays, like, being into Pokemon was embarrassing back then as a little kid. Like, if you liked Ash, Pikachu, and, like, Misty back then, or Brock, or you brought in, like, a Pokemon backpack, or you brought, like, merchandise from a cartoon show, or an anime back then in elementary school, which, let's be honest here, most people who played this game were in elementary school. Alright, then, most people who play the game nowadays got into Yu-Gi-Oh! In elementary school. So, it wasn't a commonly accepted thing to be into dorky stuff like this, even in the elementary school level. Nowadays it is. Nowadays you got kids bringing in, like, Demon Slayer, like, backpacks and, like, merchandise with them. But it's not, like, an accepted thing. And so, you allowed yourself to only play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in Pokemon within a small, tight group of friends. Like, in my book, it was, like, a group, I knew, like, 4 or 5 people, or, like, 4 or 5 people who would be into Yu-Gi-Oh! And who would be into video games, and who would be into anime. And so, stuff like this, like Magical Science FTK here, or us learning about, like, the names of the packs coming up, or the Yata-Lock, most of us did not know this stuff. Most of us did not know anything about like, the ignition effect. We were just a bunch of kids who played this game, picking it up. So if you did experience it, actually, you are part of a very small minority of people here. We know about Magical Scientist FTK now, but the large majority of people did not know about it back then when they were like 6 or 7 years old playing this game in the playground. That's where the terminology called playground Yu-Gi-Oh comes from. Oh wait, did you play? Wait, so the reason why people say playground Yu-Gi-Oh is because people played this during recess time in the playground. That's the idea why it's called Playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Because we grew up playing this game next to the swing sets, or next to the slides, or during lunchtime, or during recess. And most of us didn't play the game correctly. But the large majority of people who play this game incorrectly, so they wouldn't know about stuff like Magical Science FTK. Now, this stuff was still around, it was still ever present, but the people who are playing this format are not playing the game currently in a competitive level. I refuse to believe it. My friends had to play. I was the one to summon up Blue Eyes game low. But no, it's like there's no even Jesse Cotton and they played in Patrick Hoban. They played Edison format. They didn't play Goat format. Or the people who play Goat format and play now, you're present like a 1%. Like you are proper 1% of 1%ers. If you played during Legacy of the Duelists or Magic Rulers, but then you're still playing now, you are proper 1%ers. So if you don't play Magical Scientist, you don't play correctly. No. What I'm saying right now, like when you're a little kid and you're playing Playground Yu-Gi-Oh, we did not know about any of this stuff here. So things that were problems or issues, or things that were identified as problems and issues back then, weren't relevant because people who played this game here played broken rules, and you just made up your own stuff. And we did what we did in the cartoon show, right? Like we can all admit here, a lot of us watched the anime, and then we normal summon Blue Eyes or Dragon without tributing. Am I wrong there? A lot of us normal summon Skull, and then we set Mirror Force, and we said dumb lines like, I attack you with Dark Burning Magic Attack! Like that, right? We didn't play the game correctly. We didn't. And most kids didn't play this game correctly. And most kids never experienced Magical Scientist FTK. Most kids didn't experience the Ignition Effect. Now, I'm not saying or disregarding that any of this didn't happen. They did happen, right? But most of us played the game incorrectly. And so that's where the enjoyment of old school Yu-Gi-Oh comes from. Is that you're playing this game with broken dumb rules, and you play the game currently where there's a whole lot of rules, and it overwhelms you. You kind of turn off your brain, didn't you? Yes, they did have tributes. They did have tributes. But we're talking about Battle City era, right? Because in the original, because most people know Yu-Gi-Oh from the time of Pegasus and the time of the Duelist Kingdom arc, where there was no tribute summoning. So that's where you got into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. You got into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh by playing the Duelist Kingdom rules, where there's no tribute summoning at all, and then you commit to it. There was tributing in the Battle City arc, yeah, but at that point, then if you're with your friends, you why would you want to have extra rules or do something that will limit what you can do? If I'm 9 years old or 10 years old and I just want to normal summon Blue Eyes Dragon with no tributes, what stops anyone from telling me not to do that? I'm not a full grown adult competing in a competitive tournament. Duelist Kingdom, yeah, but many people love the guard cards. Oh, true that. People love Battle City. Battle City arc is my favorite arc in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! But as a kid, though, if you're playing this game with your personal friends and family and your cousins, then you're playing according to the rules that you think will lead to the most fun within your own group friends here. Most kids who enjoyed the Battle City arc did not go to their actual locals. I went to a locals tournament when I was 11 years old with my cousin here, and we played a duel against a grown adult no older than possibly 23 years old. And then that guy had to explain to us about tribute summoning and all the other stuff. And me and my cousin, after that experience, was like, why do you want to play a game with extra rules? Let's just play the game how we want to play it, like I did in the show. We just want to normal summon opposite tormentor and just beat people up, though. We played the game completely wrong, but that's I think the general regular kid's experience when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! You're playing the game in a derpy, unregulated, dumb way that's kind of fun. That's why the term is called Playground Yu-Gi-Oh!
Beyond
Because
its
it's
first
all
few
made up
years.
nonsense.
Magical Scientist was ultimately banned at the start
Yeah, but
of
most people are
2005
playing for the lols, not
and
win
has,
tournaments.
not
So
surprisingly,
I think people who play
remained
tournaments,
banned
even
to
currently
this day.
today, represent a small fraction of the
Catapult
community.
was errataed in, I think, 2014 to give it the once per turn restriction in order to prevent it from joining Magical
No, dude,
Scientist
nobody
on
played
the
with chain links,
permaban
dude.
list.
Chain
Next
link
up,
1
I'm
active
going
my
to
effect,
cover
chain
a
link
set
2.
called
No!
Invasion of
Nobody
Chaos,
did, dude.
released
We
near
just
the start
activated
of
effects when it felt
2004.
like it, dude.
This set came with two
Because in the
monsters
show,
that
they activate
massively
spell cards when
overpowered
they were set
compared
on
to
their opponent's
anything else
turn,
in the game
and you would
so
just do it.
far. Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, and Chaos Emperor Dragon,
You
Envoy
fully
of
understood the
End.
rules, dude? Dang.
These two
Me
monsters
not.
couldn't be normal summons, but they had very easy
See, I didn't like
special
the
summon
Tag
requirements,
Force
which
games.
involved
I
banishing
played other
a
games
light
here,
and a
but this
dark
guy here,
monster from your
BLS
graveyard.
Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning,
These
is
monsters had a whopping 3,000
I hate
attack
this card.
points, which allowed
I hate this card with the Fiery Passion here because this card is so without a doubt far beyond better than any other card in its own time period.
to swing over
This
almost
card
anything
is
else
so
in the game at the time.
insanely good of a
And
card.
aside from their attack point stat,
And you
they
feel
also
gypped
came
out.
with
And you
crazy
see it like in the
effects.
progression series here, where you beat your
Blackluster Soldier
opponent
has two
in terms of
effects.
like resource
The
management,
first one is a
and you got
free
more
removal
stuff
effect
going in your
that
way
allows the player
compared to the
to
other
simply
person.
target
And then the
banish
other
one
person
monster
just
on the field,
happens to
with the
draw
drawback
into their
of
one
giving
copy of
up its
BLS
attack
Soldier,
that turn.
summons him, and then he
The
wins the
second
game.
effect allows BLS to attack a
He
second
is
time
so
in the same battle
unfairly
phase
a
if
good
he destroys
card.
an opponent's monster.
Card art
Onto
design, I
Chaos
love
Emperor
him.
Dragon. This card has an
But
insane
the Chaos stuff
removal
was
effect,
so
which,
unfairly
at
ahead of
the
its
cost
time,
of
dude,
1,000 life points,
that like
send
it was
all
just
cards on the
unfair, or
field
you felt
and in
gypped
both
playing
players'
against those
hand to
cards.
the graveyard and deals 300 points of damage to the opponent.
See,
for
I
each
played
card sent. Both
what's
of these
the
cards
back
have
and forth
ability
strategy
to
game where it's a
outright kill the
3v3 with
opponent out
Yu-Gi-Oh
of
monsters?
nowhere if top decked.
Duels of the Roses?
The power of these two cards far
Like, they have a
exceeded
strategy game
anything
one
else
where
in
it's
the
back
game
and
at
forth
this
there.
point.
Capsule
So
Monsters,
it's
I
needless
enjoyed
to
in the
say that they
GameCube.
immediately dominated the competitive
But like,
scene.
I started playing like Duels of the Roses was
Chaos
like my
Emperor Dragon
game to
also
play.
boosted the Yata-Lock strategy, as emptying your opponent's hand created scenarios where you could lock them out of drawing any more cards with no cards left whatsoever. Chaos Emperor Dragon spent only a few months in the game.
Chaos Emperor
before
Dragon
being
still to
added
me
the
is like
TCG's first ban
my
list
favorite
later in
design monster
2004,
ever for a monster
and
card.
remained there until the start
The
of
fact that I can't
2019,
find a statue of Chaos
where it was
Emperor
brought
Dragon in
back
Japan
into the
is
game
crazy.
with an errata that prevented the player using any other cards or effects during the turn they activated the effect of Chaos Emperor Dragon. And Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the
I imagine
Beginning,
when like
spent
Yu-Gi-Oh
a
tried to be a lot
longer
more
in the
creative
game,
with their brand.
being
They're gonna try to do
banned
it with
near
the
the
anime
end
though,
of
which is pretty nice.
2005 and later unbanned in September 2011, much to the upset
See,
of
like
many
my thing was
players.
Duels of the Roses, Capsule
The last thing
Monsters,
I want
and then
to
the
talk
strategy
about that
one.
didn't necessarily contribute towards a terrible format, but it's still something I feel made Yu-Gi-Oh a bit harder to get into than it is today.
No, it's just the beginning phase of the internet.
Play. Being able to
You
play
played
online
yourself,
is really
essentially.
healthy for a card game,
Unlike
as it
online
provides
games
a
of
way to
Yu-Gi-Oh.
play with your friends remotely, or find other people to play with if you don't have any friends that play the game. The first official Yu-Gi-Oh! Online game
there it is,
was
yep,
released
I
in
remember
November
this.
2005.
Oh,
However,
man.
in order to duel, players had to spend duel pass points which were obtained by spending real money. So not only did players
my
have to
dad
pay for
signed me up
cards,
for this stuff,
they
which
had
is
to pay to
crazy.
use those cards. It's safe to assume that the average Yu-Gi-Oh player was a lot younger in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's
than they
it.
are
This is
today.
it here. Most people were these kids. And hey, look, is that a Machina card here? Yeah, but most people were these kids here. Their mom or dad is right behind them watching them play the game. And then probably judging the older kids. These are probably teenagers, actually. I see a one grown man there with, like, ball there, but yeah. Can you imagine, like, seeing some guy selling cards in the background hustling little kids? It's crazy.
And not
But
every
these-
90s
but those are
kid
the
had
kids.
parents that were willing to spend money on an online game. And even if you were part of the lucky few,
Yeah.
what if none of your friends had that luxury?
You want to know pay to play, man?
feature
This
was
is pay to
removed
play
when
right here.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Online entered its third iteration in 2009, Duel Accelerator. However, there
I did play
still
Duel
wasn't a way
Accelerator.
to obtain cards for free, other than the starter deck or trading. With Duel Links and Master Duel today, it is possible to build competitive decks without spending
Yeah.
any money, as long as you are willing to put in the time and effort to grind that virtual currency.
And it's not that much grinding. You can
In
get like a really good deck
2011,
within a short
A
time.
fan-made manual simulator called Dueling Network was
My
released,
friend was
which
obsessed
took
with
away
Dueling
the money
Network.
barriers
I
that
still play
existed
Dueling
with
Network
Yu-Gi-Oh!
on
Online.
by the off chance though.
Every card in the game
But like,
can be
it's
accessed
not
for
meant for
free.
me. Master Duels
Dueling
is so
Network
good for
was
automation.
later succeeded
People
by
love
Dueling
automation.
Book a few years later, and automatic simulators in the form of Yugioh Pro variations also popped up.
YG
with the
Omega
most
is really
well-known
good.
one
If you're not
today
trying it out,
being Omega.
I highly recommend it.
And that concludes my rather negative outlook on old Yu-Gi-Oh! Thanks for watching. I'm also thinking of doing a video that's the reverse of this one, so things I miss about old Yu-Gi-Oh! So keep an eye out for that one.
Alright, I'll probably keep an eye on that. But yeah, you can always play EDO Pro and YGO Pro. Really good simulators. I use EDO Pro and YGO Pro every single day. Because there are like some days that I just don't want to I just want to experiment with the deck. Like I'll go download a deck online and just mess around with it though on EDO Pro. But yeah, like old Yu-Gi-Oh was awful. Yeah, it was pretty awful. I'm not gonna deny that. I'm not gonna deny that. Um, but like it was fun. That's what I can safely say here. People like old school Yu-Gi-Oh, despite it being terrible in terms of balancing, because you're going back in time when you're an elementary school kid or a middle school kid here, where there's a lot less rules happening. It's a lot less complicated. You can kind of make up stuff for the most part, and you're just playing with like cool looking cards here. You don't have to learn about like chain links. You don't have to learn about link summoning or pendulums. You have to learn even though Secret Monsters really is like very simple and easy to understand. When you're a kid and you just want to play a dumb simple game with your friends and family, you don't want to do like extra math work, right? It's not that much math work. It really isn't. But you just want to like have a relaxing game where you're like playing fantasy and you're like being detached from reality and you're summoning this cool looking dragon. That's what you want. But old school Yu-Gi-Oh was awful as a game, but it's a positive memory for those who remember playing Playground Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's why people like old school Yu-Gi-Oh. Not because the gameplay was actually good, but because it comes along with memories that takes people back in time to a lot more simpler time.